Retcon is a word a lot of FNaF fans like to use when their favorite theory didn't turn out to be true, or if game theory gets a theory wrong. This word lives in infamy for the FNaF fandom as much as the word parallel. But has there been many retcons like a lot of FNaF fans suggest? FNaF has had one clear retcon, that being the kid dying outside of a Freddy's location originally being a boy. But when FNaF 6 released, the boy was retconned to be a girl, Charlotte Emily. But what we are gonna focus on today is one retcon that theorists have been trying to figure out since 2017. We don't know much about this retcon, all we know is from this Reddit post by Scott. Go down to the description, there will be a link that will lead to my Twitter account. So go follow so you can see updates, some extra mini theories, and shit like that. So go follow it and I'll see you there. All we know is from this Reddit post by Scott, which I will read through now. The retcon issue. Hey guys, I wanted to comment quickly on the subject of retcons. I made a joke last night about retconning, and it became obvious that it's very important to a lot of people, and understandably so. I have a lot of respect for this community, and the last thing that I want is for anyone to think that I recklessly change details on a whim. I assure you, that's not the case. The truth is that I've done one actual retcon in the series, although I'm not going to say where it was. There have been other times, however, when my original intentions didn't come across clearly. In those instances, I make a point to clarify in the next game. That's not really a retcon, it's simply an attempt to guide the story toward where it was originally intended to go. A quick and very minor example of this would be when adult theory happened. I could see why people were believing it, so I quickly dropped an additional teaser to clear it up. I have to do that with my games sometimes as well. I use Sister Location to clear up a misconception from FNaF 4. Currently, there is a misconception from Sister Location that I may need to clear up someday as well. Or maybe I'll just leave it to torment the fandom. So while it's true that the story has developed new details over time that may not have been planned from the beginning, that doesn't mean that the pieces don't fit together as a whole. There's a lot of information crammed into these games, and there will always be details that I don't convey 100% as intended. I try to clear up those items, but I'm certainly not retconning things at will. I have more respect for the community than that. To be clear, the one retcon mentioned was integrated pretty seamlessly, and most people didn't notice. If it had caused problems or confusion, then I would have addressed it here. So let's note the important bits from this post. It was posted on September 4th, 2017. So the retcon occurred between the first 5 games, plus Sister Location's custom night. Scott will clarify things fans may have misinterpreted to lead them to the right direction. There's a misconception from FNaF 4 that had to be cleared in Sister Location, and there was a misconception in Sister Location that he had to clarify. The retcon was integrated pretty seamlessly, and most people didn't notice. Alright, so since the post was made after Sister Location's custom night released, and before FNaF 6's release, that means the retcon happened in the first 5 games. So Charlotte being the Save Him kid is not the retcon, because I wouldn't describe a fairly obvious retcon as integrated seamlessly. So if that's not the retcon, what is? Trying to figure out what the retcon is easier said than done, because it was integrated seamlessly to a point that most people didn't even notice, and we don't know how big the retcon is, which could mean that one of the things theorists generally agree on as the answer, things like Purple Guy being Afton or Elizabeth possessing Baby. These are 100% confirmed facts, something we rarely get in this franchise. So maybe one of the actual confirmed facts we have in this franchise might not have been what was originally intended. Now, I'm not gonna list out all of the confirmed facts from the first 5 games, but I will bring attention to the fact that FNaF 4 was supposed to be the final chapter. The reason I bring this up is because Scott was really adamant that FNaF 124 is the complete story. The only thing we got was FNaF World, which just expanded Crying Child's fate after the bite. So what changed? Why did he make Sister Location? Well, that's simple. He wanted to clear up lore for FNaF 4. So what I should be asking is, what did Scott change to warrant a sequel to a complete story? Recently, we got the second Scott interview, and in that interview, he basically said that the plot point of the box never went anywhere, because he changed the story to a new direction. But it seems that he did somewhat continue the plot point of the box in FNaF World, because in the files we see a sprite of the box opened. So FNaF World, specifically Update 1, could presumably be a part of that lost box plot point. And when we got FNaF World Update 2, we were teased with Circus Baby, the antagonist of the new game. So maybe the retcon happened between Update 1 and Update 2, because the box plotline wasn't expanded upon on Update 2, but rather we got a tease to Sister Location. Sister Location itself added a lot of stuff into the lore, the inclusion of the Afton family, Circus Baby's Pizza World, the underground facility, the fun times, the nightmare experiments, and a purple guy that was actually purple. A lot of these things are new additions, with no mention of the box at all. But one of the few stuff that connect back to the previous game was the focus on a family and the 1983 code that shows us the FNaF 4 bedrooms. The 1983 code and the bedrooms were obviously to answer the long debate of what year this bite took place in, and show us Afton's scientific side. But the reveal that this family is actually the Afton family was a big deal, and that's when an idea came to mind. Were Crying Child's family always the Afton family? Like, there were already hints in FNaF 4 that this bite took place in 1983. But if we look at the 4 games on their own, like it was supposed to, what evidence were there that this is the Afton family? The only things we got was that the home was next to Fredbear's, but that can just be for saving time and not to model a whole town. And when we even see Purple Guy, Crying Child doesn't say anything about his father, and none of the other kids really hint that these 2 kids are the sons of the owner of the diner. If anything, using the 4 games alone, it would be more likely we obviously play as Mike in the gameplay of FNaF 4, because of the FNaF 1 phone call and the similarities in mechanics to the first game. So if we play as Mike Schmidt, who is the Foxy bully, then this would be the Schmidt family. What really solidified this idea for me was the movie and the Scott interview. In the movie, the Schmidt family was the focus of this story. Now listen, it's possible that Mike is an Afton in that universe as well, but I think it's more likely that Mike is not related at all with Afton. Heck, the Silver Eyes, which released not long after FNaF 4, had no mention of Afton having a family, and the rest of the trilogy didn't even have Mike or Crying Child. It only has Elizabeth, who was properly introduced in the 5th game, roughly a year after the trilogy started. The 2 of them probably didn't exist because they were not Aftons to begin with, and thus can be excluded from the story. And this next point could be a stretch, but in the 4th closet, one of the missing kids is described as wearing a striped white and black t-shirt and was never named in the story. Sound familiar? While in the graphic novel it was Gabriel, the graphic novels are often inaccurate to the original stories, and the artists have mostly free reign for character design. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying Crying Child was definitively one of the missing kids in the novels. I just thought this could possibly indicate that Crying Child was not an Afton in this universe. Like how the Crying Child stand-in in the movie universe was also murdered by Afton. And when Scott said that the box is a non-important plotline, the Schmidts being turned into the Aftons could explain why that plot point wasn't followed through on, because the contents of the box fit with this family being the Schmidts. But now that they are the Aftons, what was originally in the box would not work, thus its contents change and eventually being abandoned. If Mike and Crankchild becoming Aftons was the retcon, it would fit the fact that the retcon was seamless, because at the time, there was really no debate about the family and their identities. I mean, yeah, there was some theories about them, but people focused more on what's inside the box, which year did this bite take place in, what character Crankchild possessed, dream theory, things like that. So when Sister Location and its custom night update came out, Mike and Crankchild being Aftons was basically accepted with no issue. So Scott didn't need to clarify anything since people already accepted it. Just a thought. If I'm right in this theory, it could possibly explain why Mike Schmidt worked at the FNaF 1 location in the original story. Using the movie, this would be Michael, this would be Garrett, and the sister could be Abby. And since we don't see the sister die in the first 4 games, she could still be alive. So maybe Mike takes the job at Freddy's so he can pay the bills and take care of Abby. But now, let's ask why. Why did Scott feel the need to retcon Michael to being the killer's son? And what other factors in the story was affected by the retcon? Well, I'm not Scott, so I can't definitively say why and what. But my best guess is that he wanted Mike to be connected to Afton in some way. Since if we just look at the first 4 games on their own, Mike really does nothing and is not at all connected to Afton. In the novels, Charlie and Afton were connected because of Henry, but for the 4 games, they really have no connection, and they never even interact or even have a reason to. Maybe that's why Afton kills Garrett in the movie, so Mike can actually be connected to Afton. As for what the retcon also affected, one of them could be the Fredbear plush. Most people at the time thought the plush was possessed, and maybe it originally was, but Sister Location now showed us that Afton made that plush to keep an eye on Crankchild. In conclusion, I do think the FNaF movie is gonna be based more on the original FNaF story than a lot of people realize, and could possibly show the original intention of many characters before the retcon. Now, what do y'all think? Do you agree with this theory? Comment down below on your opinions. Anyways, if you liked this video, please like, subscribe, all that jazz, and I'll see you on the flip side.